Hey, everybody, and welcome to Crank Up the Volume. I am Alicia Crank, and we're going to have a little bit of a tough dialogue today, tough discussion. It's going to be centered around women, winning, culture, and philanthropy. And I'm saying women specifically first because I'm going to be talking about some Seattle sports teams that are not just the women's teams. Specifically, I know I want to talk about the Storm, the Torrent, and the Kraken, and around those three things I just talked about. So let's talk about winning. Winning is important. We love winning. We love it. We love it. We love it. But winning and culture, and even to a certain degree, philanthropy, are not mutually exclusive. Especially in Seattle, they are interwoven. And I think the more that we can hit upon that every once in a while, you don't have to focus on that all the time. But they are connected in the way that things happen here and how a fandom, and I'm going to put an asterisk there for a second, but how the fandom responds to it. Now, obviously, of course, we like when our teams are winning. And our two we have a lot of women's sports teams here, which I am so grateful for. But I'm going to say our two majors, which is the Storm and the Torrent, are having some winning issues. The Torrent obviously did not have a winning season this inaugural season of theirs. In fact, we were in last place. And in Storm right now have been struggling for a while. And I think as of this recording, they are 6-17, and they are currently on the road. And so I was at a watch party the other day where they were playing Atlanta. And again, I think that the watch party normally would have probably been a little larger than what it was, but there were some people there and there were some diehards there. But of course, the conversation just kind of turned to what do we need to do? How do we continue to support this team even when we're not feeling what's happening, right? We're not feeling all these losses. But I think that there is a culture there that continues to have that going. I know for one, I was excited about the new coach coming on and Flauge, obviously, and a few others, and Dom making the all-star team. Congratulations. Um, but what do we need to do to turn things around? The fandom wants to know, what can we do to help support to keep this going? But I'm sure that people in the front office and the back office as well also understand that winning has has a lot more to do with just actually winning the game. It is a domino effect. If we're winning more, then you're spending more, you're coming to games more, you're upgrading your game experience more. You're participating in the raffles and the other things that's centered around their foundation, of which they can use to give back to the community. But if you have a relatively losing season, or if you consistently are losing games over and over again, and pretty solid succession, the thought or the notion of wanting to spend more money at those games starts to wane. But if you're winning, you spend more. And I do want to talk about the Kraken for a second. The example that I came up with was one where I had a conversation with someone from the front office. Uh, I want to say a year or so ago. Again, when the Kraken were not doing that great. And it was impacting their philanthropic endeavors over at One Roof Foundation, which has now since been rebranded to One Roof Sports and Entertainment. And the Kraken, they are known for doing the different raffles, the different auctions. I shouldn't say raffles, but auctions of the jerseys and other things that are named off of the players, whether it's the player worn jerseys, their placards that they have in the locker room that have a particular theme to it. And in the beginning, when the Kraken first took off, when their first few seasons, they were making really great money off of those philanthropic endeavors. Not so much anymore. And so when I was having this conversation with one of the people there, one of the things they said was like, um, the dollars have been waning. Because if the team is not winning, people are not feeling inclined to spend more money to bid on an auction item, which we know are not inexpensive. And neither are Kraken tickets. They've gone down a bit since then. I think they heard the message from the fans and the fandom that, hey, you need to make this a bit more affordable for us. But again, that goes into a whole other business conversation around how the Kraken are funded, how there's a lot of private dollars involved. So, investors are trying to get their money back as soon as they can, which I can totally understand. But from the philanthropic perspective, okay, if you're consistently putting out, spending three figures on a ticket to go to a game and you're part of a season ticket or not, and the team is not performing well, then the idea of this forking out a few $100s more, or in some cases thousands more, to kind of get this, this item, which we know will still benefit the good, the tendency to do that goes away or it wanes. So that's why it's also important to have winning seasons. But if you don't have winning seasons, if you're not winning consistently, let's talk about culture. Because then we can go to the Torrent. And I think the Torrent inaugural season was an amazing example. We did not have a winning season, not close. But the culture that was being built this inaugural season overrode that. That's why we were consistently selling out Climate Pledge Arena. That's why even the last game we sold it out. Even though we knew we had lost the season, there was nothing. There's no coming back. We were not going to the playoffs. Was not happening. But the culture that was built was there. People saw themselves in these games, in these players, in the fandom and the friends that they started to create. You saw that all over the place, which is now why torrent fandom right now is in a little bit of a shambles. We've already talked about this. This is already being talked about right now between losing so many of those key players that helped build that culture, that the culture was built around by us. And when you start to see that go away and go, well, what's going to happen now? Who are we going to get? And I think between losing some very key players and we're still losing players, and there hasn't been a lot of discussion. Again, it's been really quiet around the new batch that's coming in and setting forth what do we want to do and continuing the culture that's been created by this group of fans. It's problematic. And I'm reminded of a phrase that I grew up with where someone said, you know what, I love you, but I just don't like you very much right now. And I think that's where a lot of fans are struggling right now. They're like, I'm trying, like, I love you, but you're making it hard to like you right now. There's been, posts about, lack of communication, not being able to get questions answered, just kind of questioning and wondering what's going to be the next thing. What do we have to look forward to? And even with the recent Seattle Pride Parade, it was such a big deal, and it still is a big deal, that the Torrent were co-brand marshals for this. But then we only had one player. A lot of staff was there, so yay, but one player to really be there out of a team. And again, it's the optics. It's like, what is happening when there's not a lot of communication happening? And then you see that, you're like, this is not the culture that we thought we had built here. And I talked a little bit about this on my TikTok the other day. And there's been some interesting comments that have come out of it. Actually, I didn't expect to have as many comments as I've received so far. And the boldness of some of those comments as well. And there's one that I want to read because I said no earlier, I said I want to put an asterisk next to fandom. And I want to read this one partial comment, a partial part of this comment that came in. And this person says, this is not a fandom, this is a community. We want to see our people, and we want to see a reflection in that torrent mirror. And I think that's where a lot of people are. Because you're saying, okay, you can't say that, why fans can't dictate that, and I think in any other situation, I would probably agree. However, it applies here because we did build a community with this inaugural team. And purposely or not, front office went with that. Front office lauded that. Lauded it, is what I'm trying to say. We built that culture. We built community with this. So yeah, it's more than a fandom. It's not just, being far away and not having this interpersonalness with the team as it went through its inaugural season. We were all ingrained in there together. We built that. It was responsive to the fan base, and that's why it grew as much as it did. That's why we were selling out those arenas. There was a sense of this is a second family. This is a second extended group of who I am, and we were seeing each other in this collectiveness. Not only with the players, but with the rest of the fans, and even with the leadership of the organization. And so now they're not seeing themselves anymore. Or there is a fear that they will no longer see themselves anymore. So my hope, again, is that, specifically with the torrent, is that we will see something happening very soon. We will see some movement very soon. And that we will start to see some engagement very soon. Now, there were some comments as well to say, hey, they're on summer break. Absolutely. Communicate that, right? And again, there are other teams within the league, not all, but there are some that are doing things. And again, you don't have to do a lot. It doesn't have to be 5, 6, 7 other players, but something that just showcases one of them, especially someone that's new coming on. Introduce us to the new family members. But when you're not seeing and hearing that, but you're kind of looking at what's happening around us, it just creates more questions than answers. Now, I'm going to say this, and I think they know this, and I think I've expressed this overall, or I wouldn't even be doing this kind of thing right now. I have mad respect for the torrent. I have mad respect for everyone, boots on the ground, front office, everything in the middle. And I know it's not an easy job. And I know it's a lot going on for very little in comparison to the male counterpart teams that are out there. But there is still communication that needs to happen. There's still messaging that needs to happen. And again, shout out to the admin team as well. They're trying to put content out as best as possible as they can. I know they just put out something with Hannah Murphy. And yeah, it's great. And like I said, they put out some things about Jarvis the other day, one of our new players. But when it's been silent, and especially when you're not talking about really your first round pick, people have questions and there's concerns and worry. So yeah, so some might say, oh, this is why, we shouldn't be investing in women's sports. They get too emotional. But I also think that women bring the dollars to the table, as we have shown. Those are comments that were talking about how much money they've dropped on merch, and again, I have to reorganize my my own home office closet because it is busting at the seams with torrent gear and merch that I never planned on getting, but you see it and you're like, I want to do it. I got to do it. No, got to do it. So we're there. And they're making those sacrifices. And they're traveling from Olympia and Bellingham. And sometimes, going across, the Canadian border lines to come and support this team. So we went from one that's been very, very communicative and sharing things out all the time to almost radio silence. And when there's radio silence, as humans in general, our minds go to places maybe that they shouldn't go, that's not warranted, but we're trying to fill that void. And right now there's a void. So I hope that we're going to have a winning team this upcoming season. I believe we're gonna have some great talent that is showcased. Do I think that there's gonna be a bit of shift in that community and that culture? Well, it has to, right? Because we've lost a lot of players, a lot of them. Um, so that means new, fresh blood is going to come in. So we got to see how we do this. But again, there's been debate on, how much do we make sure that we ingrain our current culture into the new team members? But then also, how much are we going to allow what they bring to the table to contribute to the culture that's been built? And so I think that's going to be our big assignment. So let's hope that across the board we have um, more winning teams and more games winning. Talking about the Storm, talking about Torrent, talking about Kraken even. The hope is there. And we are prepared as Seattle fans, as a Seattle community, to continue to support. But it has to be a relationship. That means it's not just one way. There has to be connectivity both ways. There has to be communication both ways. I think it's going to happen. It's just taking, unfortunately, a little longer than maybe a lot of us would like. So, yeah, I hope I gave you some things to think about. And it's definitely still giving me things to think about as well. Because we are also a community that is philanthropic and giving. And so again, we know that if the team is doing well, or if the culture of the team and its fandom is doing well, then the philanthropic efforts of those teams, giving back to the community, giving back to the youth, giving back to marginalized communities, will also rise. But if we're lacking on two of those things, being the winning and the culture, then philanthropy suffers. And it creates things as women to have to go, what do we do now? So, happy Friday. Looking forward to a wonderful weekend, and I'm actually looking forward to being in Las Vegas next week for She Weekend. It's going to be a great time, you guys. Please follow my socials, specifically Instagram and TikTok. Um, I'm going to be live posting as much as possible. I'm actually going to be part of the She Weekend content creator team. So I would get to have some exclusive conversations and interactions with people. So I think you will like it. I know that Alex Carpenter is supposed to be there, so I'm looking forward to seeing Carpy in Vegas. Uh, just hearing like a lot of great names are going to be there. I know Layla's going to be there and a few others, and other women across the sports world. It's going to be wonderful. And I think I'm so looking forward to that because, again, I think that the numbers and the enthusiasm is going to show. And shout out to Flavor Flav for just putting it out there and rallying the people together. He just tagged up with Paris Hilton. And who knew that Paris Hilton played hockey in high school and college? So I'm like, I put something out there saying, okay, PWHL, this is a collab waiting to happen. Let's make that happen. Let's ride that wave. And even Paris was even here in Seattle for World Cup. So we're learning more things. Again, the culture brings things out and brings people out and goes, wow, I had no idea that this person would ever be connected to something like this, and that maybe this person was never on my radar for whatever reason. And now we're like, Team Paris, let's go. So if you don't know what she's doing for for the women's hockey team, the U.S. women's hockey team for the ESPYs, go check it out. She's going to take care of their hotel accommodations to get to the ESPYs. There's a whole story about this, how not everyone on the team was being invited or taken care of to go to the ESPYs, and Flav just put the signal out there again, and now Paris and others are stepping up to make sure that the entire team is there and that they are represented and they are taken care of. So flights, hotel, makeup, even everything. So again, that would not happen without the culture. And that is what I want to leave you with. The culture. Let's build upon the culture. Let's keep it growing. Let's keep it positive. But also, let's make sure that we're having the tough conversations that we need to have if we see that something's not going quite right. Viva women's sports. Have a good day, everybody.